Annie, hello, welcome.
Hi, Annie.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Where are you joining in from?
Well, I am in Richmond, California, which is in the East Bay of the San Francisco area.
Nice. I like that just appeared magically in your screen, and I'm sure we're going to talk about how that happened in a little bit. But that's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you?
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just gonna say, can you give us a little bit of history? You know, who are you? What do you do? Where are you coming from in terms of? I see like this thing called All Turtles in your background. I have no clue.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I'm a front-end engineer. I got my start at a boot camp. I've been doing it for about 6 years now. Before that, I had a more visual liberal arts kind of background, and so transitioning into front-end engineering was a great path for me. I really enjoy being able to build things that I can see and love collaborating with designers. And yeah, coding was just a whole new way of, creating visual things. And so I really enjoy being able to do that. I am currently working at All Turtles, and that is a mission-driven product studio. And then at All Turtles, I have been working mostly with which is how I am presenting to you today with these fun slides and the fun background. And so we'll talk about a little bit more, but it is basically a virtual camera and presentation tool to make presentations and virtual appearances more fun and simple to do. I would have been obsessing all night if I had made this presentation with like Google Slides or PowerPoint or something, but I was able to just do it really quickly, focus on the content using And so, yeah, All Turtles being a product studio, they have lots of different products they work on, some internal, some external, and was born out of the pandemic by All Turtles team members when they were like, oh, this is what we're doing, let's make it better. And just some other things that I like to do with like my coding. All Turtles is a great fit for me because I'm a very mission-driven person. And so one of the things I really love to do with my skills is to use them for volunteering in different ways. So one of those passions is definitely with diversifying the tech field and especially reaching out to communities like younger girls in middle school or high school. So Girls Who Code is one thing that I've done in the past, mentoring a group of middle school and high school girls in Oakland to get started coding. It wasn't something that I learned until like well after college. It never even occurred to me that that was something that I could do. And then another one that I'm active with is Built by Girls, and it's a really easy mentorship program where you're paired with a non-binary or female student in high school or college who's interested in STEM, and basically just kind of show them the ropes and like, this is what I do, this is the possibilities. So yeah, those are just kind of some things that I like to do with engineering.
You mentioned early on liberal arts background. So what, out of curiosity, what's the liberal arts background? What specific subject or focus?
I have like the most liberal arts background possible at a create your own major college. So I have a BA in photography, writing, and the human experience.
That is awesome.
So basically it was photography, and then just with like psychology and race and ethnic studies and sociology, or just all the liberal arts things with visual arts.
As a philosophy major with a film studies minor, I appreciate that. That's amazing.
Perfect. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about kind of your day-to-day working on and kind of why are we even here today, I suppose?
Yeah. So with there's a pretty large ecosystem of lots of different applications. And so the ones that are more like separate web-based apps are generally what I work on. So like the account management portal, that's a Next and React app. So that's one of the main things that I work on. And then the way that I jumped into Sanity was we needed to port our content over into a headless CMS.
Yep.
And yeah, so basically we have all this content, there's like this room that's behind me, this background, there's tons of different options that are constantly changing, in addition to lots of like messaging within the app. And so we wanted to find a way to make it easier for content managers to manage that instead of having an actual engineer constantly having to update, hard-coded strings and do that. And so kind of had these key requirements that we needed to look into for choosing a headless CMS. And so we did have one that we were using for other sites that I started with. I started building it out, and then we realized it wasn't going to work for us. One of the main reasons was that we needed both read and write access, because we did have this existing content. We had all these rooms, and we wanted to be able to keep the UUIDs and the dates on those and port them over. So we needed read and write access. We wanted non-technical users to be able to modify. We needed internationalization. Currently, we support English and Japanese, but hopefully we will be adding more languages in the future. Image management, of course, ideally be able to like size and optimize images from within it. And then we wanted to be able to associate different types, so make references from one to another. And ideally have some way of dealing with a staging data set and being able to preview items. So I did a lot of research into trying out, getting started on different apps with lots of different options that are out there. Ultimately, that led us to Sanity. I felt that it really met all of those needs the best. And especially love the way that it's so customizable. You could start with a really simple schema, and then I have definitely lots of ideas. If I were just given full time, I can just work on Sanity forever. I would love to build out just a full columns app, like workflow for them someday. But for now it was able to totally, but it was able to get something started pretty easily that was, an MVP product, so that we can move that work off of our busy engineering head, so that he no longer has to deal with the content. He can just continue building the actual service application, and the people who should be managing the content can manage it.
Now, you might tell us this here in a few minutes. Let me switch our view here. But what is the app built in? Like, can you if you can't divulge, that's fine too. But
yeah, no, I totally can. So let's see. Let me skip ahead to those. So
sorry. I mean, you can go forward. That's fine too.
It's fine. Yeah. So we have the main product, right? Like what I'm sitting in here right now is a Mac app that's mainly Objective-C and Swift. And then there's also a beta Windows app that's C++ and C#. And then that serverless API that I was talking about, where the content was being managed, that was built on AWS and implemented in Go. Still is. And so that's where we handle, authentication, which works within the app, as well as that web app that I work on. It handles commerce, so like managing account payment for the premium accounts, and then all of that app content. And so, so previously this API is where the content was, and, there were just individual Go pages with objects and arrays and all of that. And that has been now moved over into the Sanity Studio. So these are the four main document types that we have right now. We have rooms, room categories that the rooms are in, tips, and status messages. And we still are ultimately hosting the content in AWS, but the API is pinged when it's ready, when it needs to update. It pulls any updates and then saves those in AWS, and that's where the content then is dispersed. And so that allows us to have a lot of control over when we ultimately make updates. And
what's really, really interesting is that I did not expect that to be the stack, right? I was actually thinking you're gonna come on, you're gonna be like, oh, this is an Electron app, and it's using web technologies, and nope.
Yeah. So you're using this in StreamYard. Is it able to use anywhere your camera's being used? Like, could we use this in Zoom? Can we use this in Google Hangouts?
Yeah, great question. So it's a virtual camera. So that means that it's I think most places, I haven't hit anywhere yet that it doesn't work. Anywhere where you're selecting, yes, I'm giving you permission to view me, instead of choosing FaceTime camera or whatever your camera input is, you
Mhm.
choose instead. And so meanwhile, is taking in the input from that actual camera, and then it's streaming that through. Yeah. And so it works for sure in Zoom. In Google Meet, we actively use both of those at work. And so we're always popping into our meetings using both that platform, but with
In meetings, is everyone using
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. We have, you'll see but yeah, we have lots of different backgrounds and they're always changing. And so some of them are also like animated, like videos and stuff. And there's lots of fun filters. So we have exciting meetings.
One of my favorite things since we at least internally started talking about like that we were going to talk with you is like I get to say and I always lean into my mic to say it
Yeah.
and I've said it more perhaps in the past 2 weeks than I've ever said before, and I actually really enjoy saying it. So
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So can you kind of give us a peek behind the curtain and let us know what else is happening? Can we take a look at it?
Yeah. So, and let me show you, let's see, a little bit of what looks like when you're in the application. So these are some of the screenshots that I shared in my project on the community site, but this is kind of an overview. So here, let's see, if I turn on my laser pointer, here is where we have our, oh, there we go. Okay. These are the room catalogs. So if you open this up and you want to look for rooms, and then back here, this is the main screen. If I switch over to the next one, and you can see how I'm like moving around within this. There are so many options, right? I can move the position of my, I can move my placement around in real time. And then there are these different effects that you can have on, so you can keep it regular, or if you want to be like kind of in a meeting, but kind of not in a meeting. Yeah, but so like in this screenshot, this view that you're seeing here, this is where you're going to appear. And then with whatever background or whatever slide shows, down here you have your slide tray. And then over here, these would be all the featured rooms, or the ones that I have like favorited, so I can easily access the rooms that I like. But there are so many different options. So in here, we have the room catalog where you see lots of the different options that are available. Here we have all the categories that you can pick from. And then like there in the center, those are the featured rooms, which are changing every week. So we choose new featured rooms. That's one of the reasons why it's always, even if we weren't adding new rooms, it's still a lot of work to maintain the content because we're constantly making that update. And then we even have, we have some like super crazy rooms where you're like automatically, look at me, I'm in a crystal ball. So yeah, just making like both presentations more fun and also just kind of your existence in a regular meeting. Also, it can be nice if you're like not feeling like you look great or whatever. Let me just throw on like a weird filter. You don't know what I look like.
That's actually what you look like in real life. Who knew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of the overview of what is as an application.
So the backgrounds, there's a lot of like artwork going on. Is that made internal, or are you like, how is that artwork like collected?
Yeah, so I think it's both. We have some internal like designers and artists who we work with. And then we also like sometimes we'll find stock images. You can also add your own custom. This one that I'm using right now was someone that one of my colleagues made for a presentation that they had last week. And I said, oh, that looks good. I'll use that too.
Yeah. So where are those? They're in the cloud somewhere, but how are they edited?
So
and
we're ultimately saving them in Sanity. Yeah. And so if you want, I can show you a little of what our studio looks like and how we manage these rooms.
Perfect. Yeah. So bring your screen on. You ready for that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So here is kind of an overview of our our desk in Sanity. And as you can see, we have rooms, the room categories, status messages. So that's when you're looking at the view, there's a little status bar up at the top. And then we also have some like a little tip modal tutorial that you can go through of how to work with But yeah, that room, this is our main spot that we're working in. So like if we look at this Earth Day room, like I said, we have English and Japanese are what we support right now. And so for all of the sections that are something to do with some user-facing string, then I use this locale string custom input that I made based off of one of the Sanity recipes, I think. No, tutorial. Sanity somewhere.
Sure. Yeah,
So we have English and Japanese available. The nice thing about doing it this way, though, is that I'm not required to duplicate everything, right? I can choose the fields that I want to have. I don't have to go in and like re-upload the same photo for the room to also make it be in Japanese. If we reach the point where we wanted to have them separate, then we could. But for now, like I can be specific and only require that for these, for the descriptions, for the titles. Categories. So this part is important because we want to be able to map the rooms to the categories. And this was one where I had to do a little extra work. So we need it to reference both ways, right? But it's really sort of only a one-way reference. Like we can pull it and say what rooms are using my category, but you can't edit it both ways. And so I created this custom component where each category is gonna do a search and see which rooms are using my ID, and then display those using the preview part. And then you can link back and say, maybe, oh, I want to remove this. So where's Earth? Probably at the bottom.
It's in there somewhere, probably.
We have lots of holiday rooms. But yeah, then you can link out to that.
The really cool thing to me on that is the fact that like actually the data is bi-directional, but yeah, like the actual input is only one way. And so this, you've kind of solved that issue of having that bi-directional reference field.
Yeah. And so we also have, I ended up recently creating this featured room to make it a little bit bi-directional because we actually did the math to figure out which was more steps if we put it on the rooms or the categories. Like, okay, if they're uploading a new room, then they would have to go over to the category and add it that way. And ultimately it felt like it was less steps if we have it live on the room. That's probably easier. The only part that was really the annoying issue was with the currently featured rooms because they're updating those every week. So if you wanted to do that, you would have to click into every room, delete it, click into all the rooms to clear it out, and then go into the rooms and add them. So I did, I think I want to continue building this out, but basically got a little bit closer to at least making the featured room be bi-directional with interaction. And so, so this little plugin is pulling in all the featured rooms, and then I can click this. This is live, so I'm not going to touch it, but I can remove all at once. So that if they want to just refresh, start from scratch on Friday, they can do that, or they can individually remove any that they want from here. So lots of holidays this week. So we have a lot of featured holiday rooms. And that was one that after launching, I got the feedback from the people who had to actually do that work. And they're like, this is really our one big pain point. And so this has made it a lot easier, at least being able to remove them all at once and then go and add them in.
So I do want to say real fast that we did have Brent Robbins on YouTube saying, please share that view component. Please share that. So whenever you've got the time, if you want to add that to your community profile too, I think there would be a lot of people who would be very appreciative of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it ultimately, they were really using the preview part. And so I think I customized some of it a little bit, but a lot of it was also just spent a lot of time looking at Sanity source code, but finding where things are coming from. It does kind of exist already. It's a matter of figuring out where the data is coming from and where you need to pass it into. Yeah. And then, yeah, so then here is where we're adding the actual content. We have a lot of different options of what the room can be. And so there's a lot of conditionals going into this background. So it can, the type, it also can be, let me open up a clean one.
Yeah.
We also can have a color. And so I created this custom, I tried using, there's a couple of color picker components, except I needed it to not include the hash. And so I had to build my own. So it's just an input, but then it uses styled style components to make this little div be whatever color is in the input. And so that's conditional. So if you see color, then the file option won't appear. But if it's a file, we choose that. And now we'll see this background file. We have to choose, is it image or movie? This was where I had to really start digging into the code to figure out how to make this, because images use the assets, but if it's movie, it has to just be file. I'm pretty sure I can still make it better than it is right now, but I created a little hack that makes it be one or the other. And that will appear based on what you select. There's also a Copilot option where they're like kind of associated rooms. So if I choose Copilot, it'll have like the Copilot of the room I'm in right now is basically flipped with slightly different posters. And so you can upload the kind of partner room here.
Okay, so yeah, so basically a room becomes two rooms in kind of one go.
Yeah. And
Jason,
yeah, and then we also
love Jason.
Yeah, we take in some Jason, and so like how I immediately shrank and got that background for the crystal ball, that was through this setting. So for the rooms that have extra special additional settings, they can easily paste that code into here. And then if there's any like internal notes that you need, and yeah, that's rooms.
I can very easily see how you could spend all your time making cool new things for your studio, because there's
Yep.
like there's so much cool stuff happening, and like so many ways you're like, I could do this tweak and this tweak. It's like,
Yeah.
I look at the JSON field, and like you could make that like an array field of some sort, and like we could do it in this way. But yeah. You make it work first, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I so one of the other things we had, well, okay, so the beginning, the MVP of this was this dashboard widget that I created for content sync. And so how I mentioned that we're not directly, the apps aren't pulling directly from Sanity, they're pulling from AWS. And so the way that we decided to handle it was instead of having it constantly look for any updates, we have this content sync button, and this will ping our API to pull the updates. And so you don't have to worry about like publishing, like if you finish, you're ready, you hit the publish button, so it's good to go, but you wait until you're ready to actually publish them. And then you can hit sync production, that'll sync production. What we did with staging so that we don't have to worry about porting over different data sets is, if I recall correctly, I think where we ended up with this is that staging is also pulling drafts. And so you don't necessarily have to have it published. It'll pull drafts, or you can just update it before hitting production. And so that gives us more control over exactly when it goes out. Future, I would love to create more of a specific, like a custom structure with, a workflow of like, here, this is in review and this is ready to go. But for now, this was where we started. And then again, another thing, after getting feedback of them working for it, they said, we like this, but sometimes we lose our place. It sucks. You're in a room, you're doing all this stuff, then you have to go to the dashboard, then you find your way back. So I found the absolute part, which allowed me to stick this button here anywhere and use the new Sanity UI to create this modal. Yeah. And so it's still basically those same buttons, but they're available anywhere, no matter where you are in the app.
That's awesome. That's like so convenient for your editors. Like just, I just made this one change. Don't make me go to the dashboard.
Yeah.
No, we'll just put a button there for you.
Yeah.
Nice. So one thing that we had in the chat a little while ago from Vince was some curiosity around the tip modal. I don't know if you can show that or not, but I almost stopped you back when you were talking about it. I was like, oh, there's like more content
Oh,
in the app.
in the app, like within where it shows the tips. Is that what you mean?
Well, no, just like what is that schema for the tip, and then yeah, like how
Gotcha.
that kind of affects the app.
Yeah. So this one is pretty straightforward. Yeah, let me show you that first. And there's just a few right now. So it's kind of just basic content of some text that appears. And then this is used to decide whether or not it should be shown. And these images, this was one that was done custom because these ones are actually saved directly within the app code. Like the static assets, I don't know Xcode much or Swift, but yeah. So these I had to do a slightly custom for that. So I saved the images. Ultimately, those aren't being served from here, but I needed them to show here so that they could be used in the radio array. So I have the images saved statically, and then they show up here. And then I did a custom image preview radio, which basically is like styled components and then show a little thumbnail of the static image.
Nice. While we're in here, since all your studio code is right here,
Yeah.
I do want to go, and if you can show off that bi-directional field, that would be great.
Yeah. So the more simple one that I started with, and now I would like to go back because I realized, oh, I might as well have added the delete to begin with now that I know it's possible. But so the one that lives on the category is this preview references. And so let's see. This is combining, I feel like it's not spaghetti code. I came up with lasagna code. I have layered different pieces of recipes and tutorials and source code that I've been able to find. One great thing that I found was collated documents. And that was an issue that I encountered early on where, oh, like if you have a draft, it's going to show up twice because there's the draft ID and the regular ID. And so this collate function that I pulled in combines them into one. And then, and how did I get that? Oh, and then I use this query to get the documents, and I got use documents is a Sanity thing. And then I, with collate, I also return its status of, has it been published? Has it been published ever? And does it currently have a draft? So I can also make a note of this has changes that hasn't been published yet, or this hasn't been published at all. And then ultimately using kind of a combination of older Sanity parts as well as some Sanity UI components to display the preview row. Preview is a Sanity part, and that lets us show the little image thumbnail and the title. And then I tack onto that the status that I added of, is it published or not? And then created this button using intent link. That was a Sanity part to edit. And so this will allow you to click and go straight over to that item in the room documents if you need to make edits. And then I can jump over to the featured one where I also have delete if you want, or are there any questions on this?
No, I don't think so. Other than I love seeing Sanity UI in the wild alongside like, you know, some of the older stuff too. Like there's no reason not to mix and match when you need to.
Yeah, and like I feel like some of it, there were reasons why it did or didn't work, and some of it was just based on what I found that I was following to understand, you know, or like earlier on, I feel like Sanity UI launched after I started, so some of the earlier stuff it definitely isn't using it, and I think I could go back and make it better now. But then for my featured rooms plugin, where does that start? Okay, so I have my current rooms container, and oh, okay, so that uses query container, which was something cool that I found where like I definitely could have refactored and made the one that I just showed you a lot better and easier. It was just this magic cool container where I pass it the query. So search for any room that references the ID of the featured room category. Mm-hmm. And then it just like gives me the rooms. And so in that, I say like once ultimately it's ready with no errors, we open up rooms list and pass in the results of that query. And then in here, I again use that collated documents to combine them and then figure out what the status is. And then I'm ultimately going to render for each one a room card. So that's the row. And from there, it's more or less the same thing, except probably done a little better because I understood Sanity a lot better by the time I wrote this a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, so like pretty similar thing, except this time, let's see, the button is going to be remove. And instead of, so I didn't use that intent link. I used the Sanity client for this, which was cool because since I'm not using, like most people are building out like the front end ultimately, I haven't done that. Like for me, the product is the studio. And so, but here I was able to use the Sanity client and ping that. And so I am updating the rooms or like one room at a time here, just taking that room, remove it from featured category, and then commit it. And then for the remove all button, I'm hoping, I feel like there's probably a better way to do all of them at once, but this was what I came up with. And
do what works first and then optimize later. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's pretty much the same thing, but it's going to map through, find all of those current IDs and patch and unset all of them.
Nice. We actually have a question. It's not about this, but it's kind of overall, and I think you answered it earlier, Annie. But Marcus, who may or may not be a Sanity coworker of ours, said, "Do you use multiple data sets, which you're referring to and from, or is that something that you're looking to do?" I think you said that you're only on the one data set right now. Is that right?
Yeah. So what we ended up doing, I do have two, but the other one is just dev, so that I don't have to worry about ruining live things when I'm just messing around locally and building this. But as far as like staging versus production, we did look into different options. Also played around with spaces a little bit and trying to do it that way. But yeah, this just felt easiest, so we don't ever have to worry about migrating anything over. We just have the one data set that's used for staging and for production. I'm not sure, I don't remember if they ended up keeping in the feature of whether or not drafts are included, because once we ended up going to those sync buttons where you can choose when it's updated, at that point, I guess it doesn't matter as much because you can just publish everything and don't actually push the production button yet, just push the staging. So yeah, I think that has been a pretty good solution for us so far.
So I don't want to take up like huge amounts more of your time. This has been an awesome conversation, like lots of really cool stuff happening. But I do want to make sure, is there anything else you kind of want to showcase inside of here? Because you've got so many cool little widgets all throughout. And I know that people watching have been really enjoying it. So if there's anything else cool you want to show, I want to make sure that we get it on air.
Let's see. I think the one thing that I can show this if nothing else, so that someone else can be like, oh, that was a terrible way that you went about that when you were first learning this. Let me give you the real way. I can show you my lasagna code for the room files.
Sure.
And so, yeah, so that was a combination of like just conditional, whether or not it should be rendered, but especially should it be an image or should it be a file type? And so what I came up with for that, we have the background file. Here we have, okay, so the different fields within that, we have type, is it going to be image or movie? And then there's background media and Copilot background media. What I ultimately learned is that Sanity, like you're just telling it, you're just giving it a string, right? You're saying type equals image, easy peasy. But Sanity turns that into this whole thing, right? And so I kept hitting this error. Like if I tried to manually, when I'm rendering, say, okay, make this be a file instead of an image. They're like, no, I want an object because you should have turned it into this crazy thing. I feel like now I understand probably there's a part of like the schema or something that I could have pulled in, but I came up with this little Trojan horse for it because I just happened to have two different fields that I was passing in, background media and Copilot background media. I set background media to be type image and Copilot background media to be file and accept video. And then once we get into background file, then I check, is it actually based on the selection, is it actually supposed to be file or image? And then I just go with either the one that was passed in through the Copilot Trojan horse or the regular one. And then here I use whichever it is to set the type, or where is it? Yeah. I set the type based on that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's definitely like at the beginning. We kind of talked about like the idea of like conditional fields, and conditional fields is something that is on like the roadmap, and we do want to get to because it would clean this code up a little bit. But the cool thing is you can make it work.
It worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would definitely love to have that future change made, but this was what I came up with, and went through a whole lot of learning along the way to get here. And it works.
Yeah.
Well, and it turned out great, and this product is super fun. I mean, being able to bring up your studio or like bring up your screen like that in a more fun way than just like PowerPoint. But I mean, the detail behind this, like in the studio, but then also like getting local like artists or like internal artists to like be able to show their work it's a great product.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really fun to work on.
Nice. So I always ask this question at the end, right? And other than like we had the conversation, but like what kind of inspires you to share some of this stuff with the world? Like why share it? Why go for that?
Yeah. So I felt like Sanity was a really different was a really different application of Sanity than a lot of what I'd seen. Like it makes a lot of sense to use it for being the beginning of a front-end site that you want to build. But I mean, I had never even heard of headless CMSs, or I hadn't used them until I was tasked with this, right? And I just thought it was so cool that like suddenly here I am, like participating in this direct pipeline to this desktop app that I wouldn't have seen myself doing that, And yeah, and I also just love to like help people and like give back to communities that I'm a part of, right? Like I'm asking so many questions in the help channel on Slack, and so when I see other people having those questions, or they're trying to do something that I've already done, then I want to share with them, like, here, let me save you from all of the source code diving that I did, and to help you get straight to the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't familiar with it, we do have a Slack community, as Annie's kind of talking about. Slack.sanity.io will get you an invite into the Slack community, and there's a very helpful and very busy help channel. There's a lot of cool conversations that happen in there, as well as the I Made This channel, where things like this get shared and all sorts of amazing things. Yeah. So, Annie, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today. We're going to move into the after show.
Thank you.
Nice. Like I saw you jump and I was like, oh, what's coming next? I have to know.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you so much. And to those watching live, we'll be right back in a few minutes. And to those not watching live and watching the YouTube video later on, come watch these live. They're a lot of fun. So we'll see y'all in a second.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Annie.